In 2011, social weather stations asked the public, who are our genuine Filipino heroes? The three who topped the poll were Jose Rizal, Andres Bonifacio, and Ninoy Aquino. That was 14 years ago, the entire length of a basic school education, and then some. So much has happened since. What does the public think of Ninoy now? More important, what can the people learn from Ninoy today? Hi, I'm John Nery, and you are in the Public Square. We are joined today by the stalwart stewards of the Ninoy and Cory Aquino Foundation. The longtime president of the foundation is social enterprise advocate Rapa Cojuangco Lopa, while its executive director is Kiko Aquino Dee, the political scientist who has been in the news recently because of his impeachment advocacy. Welcome, Rapa and Kiko, and thank you for joining us in the Public Square.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
So let me go back to 2011. I was struck by the results then. 75% said Rizal, 34% said Bonifacio, 20% said Ninoy, and then the rest were, like, I think, single digits already. Were you surprised by the results when it came out or when you learned of it?
Actually, I'm just reacting to it now. I don't recall this coming out earlier, but I think my first reaction is how many options were people allowed to give? So was it they were allowed to name top things?
Yes.
Open-ended po. And then I think it's fresh off of the Pinoy victory in 2010. No? So definitely there's some priming there maybe for Ninoy. But all of that to say though, it's I think touching that something like 1/5 of the population place Lolo Ninoy and the level of these two other heroes that really shaped the direction of our country.
Yeah, same. I guess. I mean, he passed away at 83, so years have really passed, and for people to recall ending up, maybe it's Noy's president sort of contributed to that, but at least there is that, and probably also the fact that the 500 peso bill used to be in Aquino. But more than anything, it's really, I think, to what Kiko said, it's really comforting to know that at least people see him as somebody who's changed the destiny of the country, changed the path of our country, and hopefully they think of it as towards the better. No? And I think more and more naman, even as many critics still are present. I mean, all in all, I think I guess the legacy of Ninoy Aquino is reviving from my sense, I guess.
Yeah, let's talk about that. What does the public think of Ninoy now in 2025? Do the people think of Ninoy?
You know, I would even suspect that maybe not as much. I guess years have really passed, no? And probably people will really be more associating themselves with more present day leaders and more present day personalities. No? In the same way as our recollection of old heroes like Rizal, probably they're getting to that point that they are heroes in our textbooks. They are heroes of the past, and really, I mean, that's been quite some time now. So, but I think the mere fact that many people continue to live out the ideals or continue to live out the advocacies of Ninoy Aquino is, I think, one of the testaments that in a way his memory lives on, and I think that's what we in the Aquino Foundation hopefully want to continue doing, and really get more people looking at other ways they can be like Ninoy. And there was in fact a campaign in 2008 on the 25th anniversary where we captioned this whole thing that I am Ninoy.
I remember that.
That I am Ninoy campaign, that there is a Ninoy in each one of us. And I guess what we try to do in the foundation is for people to realize what's the Ninoy in them without having to even say Ninoy Aquino, but I mean really living out the ideals and the advocacies that Ninoy fought for.
Yeah. Can I tweak the question for you, Kiko? When you say the word Aquino, who is top of mind? Is it Ninoy or Cory or Ninoy?
Well, honestly, I think when we did trying to get the sentiment of people online on it, top of mind is the airport more than anything else.
Yes, okay.
Right. And ayun, I think the last time I heard it checked, and honestly, I haven't been on top of sort of getting updates on this recently, but I think the last time we were looking at this was in time for the 40th anniversary of his death in 2023. No?
That's right.
And I think what was happening, the sense that we got was, it's actually Pinoy, I think, that is more top of mind, since it's, most of our electorate is millennial, Gen Z, and it would be Pinoy that they have had, or Tito Noy that they would have had real life experience with. No? But in terms of sentiment, it depends how you measure it. No? When we did that study, if you filter out NAIA, and there's already a lot of negative things to say about NAIA, but when you filter out NAIA, I think the overall becomes a bit more negative pa nga if you just look at the online chatter. Of course, online is not the whole country, no? That's like a certain part of the population. So I do think Tito Rapa has the longer view, no? Na he's been there, he's been in the foundation for long, and I think it's really the end goal is still that, no? For people to sort of imbibe the values that Lolo Ninoy, Lola Cory, even Tito Noy now had. But I think I felt like coming into the foundation na may we're under siege yung approach ko na okay, we're on the ropes, people don't consider them popular, and to the extent that, and if they don't think negatively of them, they don't really have an idea of what they're about, no? So I think what I sort of wanted to do was, in addition to highlighting people who are doing good work now, how can we tell their story, the specific story of the three of them? Yeah. And so that's why I sort of dug my heels on working in the museum and then trying to redo the exhibit to speak to a more modern audience while still keeping the same values that Lola Cory would have wanted people to learn about Lolo Ninoy herself, and inferring from that what we would have wanted people to learn about Tito Noy then. So yun, I think the last time we checked, I think we're on the back foot, but it's, I think, a position I think we've come to accept that, okay, this is the position, and then we will work from there.
I'm going to get back to that point a little later, but I'd like to ask, Rapa, you mentioned the 2008 campaign, I am Ninoy. There's a bit of Ninoy inside me. So and you have seen, I've seen that, for instance, in the social enterprises that you've been a part of. I'd like to ask, what should the public think of when they think of Ninoy? So now, 2025, it's 42 years since his assassination.
I think it's very important to, because he really lived in different times, no? Okay. In other words, when you ask the question, what should people think of Ninoy now? I think it has to really be put in the context of what are the challenges now, that, where you now challenge your own principles and your own advocacies and your own principles now. In the same way as during Ninoy's time, of course, the political context was much, much different from what it is today. Of course, there's some similarities. Some of these other things are coming back. But really, just in the context of how would you respond in the same way Ninoy would respond? And I would go to the point again that you really need to dig deep down. And in the end, that was what was the defining moment of Ninoy Aquino. And we all know, of course, we during our time, there was much talk about him being an ambitious politician, very driven, achieving political milestones at very early age, and suddenly getting stopped by martial law. And in the process, actually, what was thought of as a way to silence him became his reawakening. Became for him the more profound time in his life that actually transformed him to become the leader that he has become, or that I think I would remember him by. So it's very important that when you discover yourself and you discover the Ninoy in yourself, you should discover the pureness of yourself, the pureness of your intentions, the pureness of your principles, to the point that you will not be afraid to venture into any other thing.
But you have to be purified.
Yeah,
that's what happened.
You have to go through that transformation because clearly Ninoy was pretty much similar to many of our politicians, very ambitious and very driven about achieving, high positions. But when everything all went down, when he was really zero in prison, that's when he discovered the real person that he was, or the person that he was. And
that's the Ninoy we should remember.
That's the Ninoy we should remember. That that in the end, when everything is gone, we are called to a mission. We are called to really do something for our people, for people who are brought to our lives. And what do we do? And kumbaga saan yung hugot natin para tulungan yung mga taong yan, di ba? And I think towards the end, that's where Ninoy was. But like even coming home, deciding to come home in August of '83, it was really that pure intention. I need to go back because the country might go into political turmoil. Of course, because President Marcos at that time was already very sick.
Yeah.
No, so how do you now control a situation that might go crazy? No, and since he still felt he was considered as one of the more influential political leaders at that time, the task was there to get to some form of unity or to get some form of.
Right.
Let's talk about what the country needs. No?
That's right.
Of course, unfortunately, he passed.
So, Rapa and I belong to the same generation, so we saw history split into two. No, I mean, there's the assassination, and then before the assassination and after the assassination. In your case, you've studied political science. You teach political science in the University of the Philippines. Kiko, what should we think of when we think of Ninoy?
Well, honestly, I don't really look at it so much with my political science hat po, because when I was doing political science, definitely I got into it because all of these things happening with my family, I wanted to have my own lens in it. But to sort of discipline myself na I come from a particular position to sort of test my own biases. The kind of policy I got into was a very quantitative, non-historical, statistical type of policy. So it's not really, I don't have that many opportunities to talk about Ninoy in the context of the classes that I teach. But I think just more what would I like to remember, it really draws in from the way Tito Rapa would talk about Tito Noy, that Lolo Ninoy, that ultimately it's a love story. And in the case of Lolo Ninoy, from a young age, yes, he was ambitious kasi he lost his dad at a young age. His dad was known to be a collaborator with the Japanese, and he wanted to redeem the name of his father. So there's that love story. But he also just loved the people that, he's such an extrovert, he loved the people he was around. So parang there's a story na nung bata siya, pag may mga parties, mga adults, nasa labas siya pagkwentuhan sa mga driver, diba? So he just wanted to be around with people. And yun, going back to the theme of transformation, when he was put in jail, parang the ambition was stripped away, and what was left was that love for the Filipino, diba? And that's, I think, what underlies the Filipino is worth dying for. Kasi mahal ko yung kapwa kong Filipino, diba? And, if the dignity of a person that you love is violated, which is what happened during the Marcos dictatorship, then one, you stand alongside that person. And si Lolo Ninoy was unjustly imprisoned for 7 years and 7 months. Ultimately, he was killed unjustly on August 21, 1983. But he faced all of that because out of love and out of solidarity for his fellow Filipino. And I think right now, I think that's something that I hope resonates with people. Na definitely, it's very frustrating to see what's going on in the world around us, and definitely the disproportionate amount of responsibility for that, for what's happening in our country, lies on our leaders. But we live in a democracy to an extent. We also contribute to that with our vote. And it's very easy to say na nakakainis naman yung parang ang hirap mong mahalin, di ba? Pilipinas ang hirap mong mahalin. But I think that's the challenge of Lolo Ninoy, that he lived through, I still believe, harder times during a full-out dictatorship. And he still, when he was brought to his lowest, yung pinanghawakan niya yung pagmamahal niya sa kapwa niyang Pilipino. And that not only let him achieve so many things, but in the end, inspired everyone to sort of band together 3 years later and kick the dictator out. No?
It's amazing that the last 10 years of his life is actually what recommends him to us, no? As a hero. That's why we gravitate towards him. Sure, there are some institutional reminders, no? The Ninoy Aquino International Airport, the 500 peso bill for a time, and Republic Act, I forget the number now, which declares August 21 as a holiday, no? Which is different, for instance, from February 25, which is a presidential prerogative or something. So there is that. And yet, it's actually the last 10 years, 7+ years in detention, in jail, and then 3 years in exile that actually shaped him. And for me, one of the most amazing things is to realize he was only 50.
Yeah.
He was only 50. I mean, of course, now we're the other side of 50, but even when I first realized that, many years ago, parang, ang bata pa.
Yeah, he was midlifing in prison.
He was midlifing in prison.
So he had gotten over it by the time he was
time, exactly. My God, I don't have much of a choice.
Yeah, so the youth, parang he packed so much into. I mean, that was really his story, right?
yeah.
Young man in a hurry, right? Youngest, was it vice mayor, youngest governor,
youngest mayor,
youngest mayor, vice governor,
youngest senator ever, and so on. And then another thing that also struck me, if you look at history, it turns out that there were actually many other distinguished oppositionists who could have been public enemy number one for Marcos, right? Jokno, Tanyada, all, Rodrigo, Rojas. I mean, they're all formidable. And yet, number one was Ninoy, and he only spent 5 years or so in the Senate. That's another thing I think that I think we should invite people to learn more about it.
Yeah,
What did he do in that short one term?
Or I understand one school of thought, guys, it was before he was senator. He was governor of Tarlac. And as I understand it, Tarlac was the only Ilocano-speaking province, kasi Tarlac one-third speaks Ilocano. It's the only Ilocano-speaking province where Marcos didn't win in his first, I think, presidential bid. And because si Ninoy at the time was, Lolo Ninoy was in the Liberal Party, then Marcos had jumped ship to the Nationalista, diba? So one theory is na may ganong, parang animosity na this was the blemish on Marcos's record. So medyo he had his eye on Ninoy. As a governor for a little while first, there were some interactions. And then later as a senator. As a senator naman, si Lolo Ninoy also had this political trick, no? Kasi he knew that his age was an issue.
Yeah.
And the courts had previously ruled against him when he was mayor. He only ended up serving 1 year. So I think there's also a school of thought that says, okay, he wanted to make a big splash in politics as an oppositionist. So it'll look like if they kick him out for his age, it'll be political persecution as opposed to just following the requirements. So may ganung, parang, of course, he's not around to dig into the reason, explain the reasons himself, no. Pero these are the schools.
But he also learned from the Joknos, the Salongas of his time.
Probably is the most charming of all. Because he really connected with the people.
That's right.
Very well. Again. And I guess that Philippine politics, even up to now, there's that star appeal. There's that. The charm.
He was a star. He had that X factor, no?
Compared to that, of course, you're very intelligent guys like Jock.
Sure.
But they're there. But they're not going to charm the way he would charm or the way he would communicate or connect with people. Different, very different. So there's that, and of course, more than the fact that he's also very articulate. People admire how he's able to talk so fast, but at the same time communicate in a very concise.
That's right. And now I'm so happy that there's more than a few videos on YouTube, which everyone can see for free, where you can see him, in his element, talking.
But it's interesting that these videos kasi are after his senatorial career pa, diba?
That's right.
I think I imagine like in the late 60s, early 70s, hindi pa uso yung pagvi-video.
That's right. Yeah.
Dito. So it is a bit of a shame nga na like what he sounded like delivering yung mga Garrison State and the Make or Oplan Sagittarius, yung Jabida. Like we don't, like the speeches are all there and you can kind of infer what he would have sounded like, but the exact tone of voice is sadly
actually you need
lost
to
to
find that because there was a tape, there was an audio recording of the Jabida, I think.
Meron ba?
I have to check.
That's interesting.
That's exciting.
We have to look for that.
I always assumed na wala eh.
Let's go to social media and find out that. Because I think something there.
Kasi, but sometimes it's really amazing what people find. Kasi so there's this interesting story na diba, the Face the Nation interview that he had during the 78 Batasang Pambansa was recently released in full
that's right,
on YouTube.
That's right,
And I don't know, I think you can tell this story. No? So actually, the Aquino Foundation and a bunch of other groups that we work with that are involved in history got a cold call. Na someone was saying, I have this tape. I think it's like a rare find. So I mean, I'm very happy to share it with you, but I want just compensation basically for the find, diba? And then siguro I was talking with some common friends who also got the same email, and we were thinking, is this legit? Is this fair? And only to find out we were beaten by the punch by Democracia TV, I think is the one that actually got it. And thank God that it was Democracia TV that just put it out there for free. Otherwise, it would continue to be lost.
Yeah. I remember watching that live.
Yes.
He again, with very limited opportunity, he made the most of this. No, so this was for the IBP elections. Speaking of his speeches, I'm sure that there are other things that you're doing. What does the foundation do to help spread the word about Ninoy?
Well, so definitely the focus for the last couple of years was the museum. No? So we did a renovation. The museum was originally designed by President Cory, my Lola Cory, and it told the story of Loli Ninoy more or less the way she wanted it to be told. And for the most part, we kind of kept most of the bullet points of what she put together. But the idea of our architect, si Tito Dan de Chaco, who's also the nephew of Ninoy through Lola Mao.
Also our
older-
batch.
Yeah. So his big idea was he wanted to make the new museum, sort of design it around the theme of choice. No? So what we did was
I wrote something about that. Yeah.
we would begin each section with a choice that Ninoy, Cory, or Pinoy would make. So for Ninoy, it's so the first choice is you're faced with being orphaned at a young age. Do you sort of seek comfort within yourself, within your family, and then stay within your comfort zone, or do you go out? And then obviously Ninoy is the one who goes out, right? And that begins his local politics career. His journalism in Korea actually comes first, and then talking to getting Luis Taruk to come down at the age of like 22 or 23, something like that, which is also like incomprehensible to someone like me who's like 10 years older than that na. And then at the end of his towards the end of his senatorial career, choice again. Do you collaborate with Marcos? Do you resist? And then if you resist, it opens up again into the story of what he went through in martial law, all of the 78 Batasang Pambansa election, Laur before that, the hunger strike. And then when he's exiled to the US, the choice again is do you stay? Do you come home? Diba? And then when you decide to come home, then the story of the August 21 is told. No? So I think the thing that we're trying to present lang is while, and even I have a hard time sometimes thinking of Lolo Ninoy as another person since I never met him. And even trying to get into his head, it's so hard. He's such a force of nature. It's so hard to imagine him taking these other options. No? And yet, I think the thing we want to tell people in the end is these are still people, right? These are people who, like all of us, are faced with choices, and the choices that they make affected not just their lives, but the way they're remembered and the lives of other people around them. So I think that's an important takeaway. You know? We all get to make choices, maybe not as visible as Ninoy, but we all have to make those choices when they're presented to us.
So that's one way, right? You get people to go to Tarlac, right, to the Aquino Center, right? What about outreach?
I think that's ano naman. Long story short is we're getting there, no? Pero the idea lang is, I personally really wanted to get the museum right because I think of it as like our foundational document.
Yeah.
This is the story that, this is the version the family wants to tell. This is the one that, to the best of our knowledge, is true. And we're continuing to review everything there, adding to it when there's something exciting that we want to talk about. And then from there, we decide, okay, how do we tell this? How do we bring this experience to social media? How do we bring it maybe physically to other places, which is, I think, what we're figuring out for the next couple of months. And how do we like convert this sort of experience of choice? How do we convert it into something mobile that we can get people? Because the tactile experience is still important. I think if a screen doesn't do it justice, you have to like face that corridor and then choose where you're going. So we're thinking about like the mobile version of the exhibit later. And I think I'm grateful that I think a lot of there are content creators who I think are much more I don't want to say native, but much more proficient with the language of things like TikTok, Instagram, and everything. That helped us out. Like si Mighty Magulang came to the exhibit recently, and she really, like was it a 1 minute video or even shorter? She really just captured what I wanted to say, and it takes me 2 hours to tell the story to the movie. So it's I'm grateful that we're not alone in figuring out how to do this task. No, there are people they just surprise us na they're there, they're willing to work, and I think we figured that out together.
Yeah, pretty much like that. Because that's why I was so happy that Kiko agreed to become executive director because luma na tayo dyan. And we really need to find new ways of communicating. I mean, even you here in Rappler, I'm sure you know how much we need to do a pivot on how we communicate and how we connect with our people. And that's why I think even the whole idea of the museum as more experiential and more more experiential, more active rather than just a passive seeing of memorabilia and pictures. We wanted people to really get into the internal. Again, it was a whole internal process that Ninoy went through, and even Cory and Noy, when they made their choices. No, we want them to get through that experience because we're gonna all make choices every day of our lives, diba? And if the legacy is to live on, we want to be able to share that it was not only the choice that becomes the legacy, but it's also the realization that you have to make very important choices in your life. No, and I think that's the goal. And maybe how we do that in social media or how we do it in other platforms is really the challenge.
Yeah.
Because that's what it is. I mean, are you going to be corrupt? Are you not going to be corrupt? Are you going to steal? Or are you not going to steal? Or are you going to take care of your family? Or you're going to go somewhere else? These are very critical day-to-day choices. And of course, the varying levels of importance to the whole nation's experience. But as I encounter, even low-income families in the work that I do now, they have to make very difficult choices every day. And sometimes because of the difficulty in life, they make compromises along the way. And we know sometimes when compromises are done, sometimes it doesn't. Once you get into compromise, it doesn't. It really leads you astray now, or it really deters you from where you really need to go. No? So therefore, it's very important to be mindful about the idea of choice, the idea of really discerning what needs to be done, what's important, and what's good. And we will not claim to know that all our choices were good. I mean, we made wrong choices along the way, but the important thing is when you see that you're going astray, I think it's very important to, how do we go back? What are the choices we need to make to go back? And I think that's what the Aquino legacy. I mean, they're not perfect individuals. They had their mistakes. Ninoy, Cory, Pinoy. I mean, there were many, but you can see that there was that conscious desire to always go back to that even narrow road, but still that's narrow and straight road. No? It's that. It's really. I think if people need to be mindful about something if you look at the Aquino legacy, not only of Ninoy but also of Cory and Ninoy, and even these young people, the next generation Aquinos, yung to choose the narrow but straight path. We will detour sometimes. We are human beings, but always be conscious about the need to go back.
In terms of, I'm trying to imagine it. I haven't visited the Aquino Center yet, but what happens if the museum goer chooses the other?
That's it.
We
had a hard time figuring that out.
Do you end up in a dead end?
Sometimes, no. So, for example, if Ninoy had chosen to sort of go within himself after he lost his dad, then you see, okay, this is the Aquino family. Since we had nowhere else to put it, this is the Cojuangco family. Then this is who they were, and then they live very comfortable lives. And you can imagine Ninoy sort of. It's a hard thing to imagine, I guess, since it's Ninoy, right? But you can imagine someone living just a comfortable life as parang a member of the landed elite, diba? The others are just literally dead ends. So if he chose to collaborate with Marcos, that's a dead end because there's nothing that we could really show to that effect. And then the ones that actually
and in fact those choices were actually presented to him, right? I mean, Marcos called him and said, all you have to do is broad.
Just leave the call,
So say sorry and,
we're good. We're good.
We're good.
We mess with the timeline a little bit because here you're making the choice before he's arrested, diba? But still, he had that choice constantly in prison. Do I collaborate? Do I resist? No? And actually, the ones that I found most touching now was actually more for the ones of my Lola Cory and Tito Noy. No? The question was yun, am I going to run for president or not? Right? And the dynamic of that choice was a little different for Lola. She never had it in mind. It's a little different for Tito Noy na he was sort of climbing the ranks as a politician na rin at that point. But the question is if you hadn't chosen this, then you go into our exhibition of parang 25 Times Street, which is the place where si Lola Cory and Tito Noy sort of lived together after the presidency of Lola, before the presidency of Tito Noy, right?
And where the coffin was first displayed, right?
Of Tito Noy. No? Although parang we have a slightly separate separate display for that since we didn't want the coffin to be in the same place as the idyllic family life. No, but that's the story that we're putting up. Na parang these people, if they hadn't chosen this, they would have gone home to their families, and it's not something I could have condemned them. Kasi parang Lola would have wanted to be mother to my mom, and her brother and sisters would have wanted to be grandmother to us and everything. But And she was, no? And that's why we have things to show for it. But kumbaga, she could have chosen that, and it would have been a fulfilling life by a lot of standards. But there was another calling that she ultimately chose to respond to, and hopefully for the better.
Many of the things that they've spoken of in relation to Ninoy, they're all what I might call existential values, no? Existentialist values, right? Redemption, personal courage, resistance in the face of oppression, choosing the right thing. In terms of, for lack of a better term, isms, right? What would Ninoy have stood for today?
Do you mean like ideological?
Yes, ideological. So I guess one thing that we can readily agree on is nonviolence. That's what he got out of his 10 years, right? And he came back and said, no, it has to be Gandhi's way, right? So aside from believing in active nonviolence, what else?
I think I guess people find so many things in Ninoy, right? In the other work that I'm doing, no, parang I've worked with sort of Christian groups that lean conservative, but find a lot of inspiration in the Ninoy who moved to the redemption story of Ninoy, that he gave up personal ambition and sort of devoted his life to his faith and to his people. No? So they find inspiration in that. I also work with progressive groups that look at how Lolo Ninoy administered Hacienda Luisita, that despite it being sort of it's like displayed as an example of sort of rural injustice in the country. But si Lolo Ninoy introduced a lot of what we might call in the government context welfare programs for the
when he was the
tenants
manager.
when he was the manager, no, or when he was in public office, no, he leaned progressive in a number of other issues. So I think. What's interesting to me is, I feel like people from different persuasions find something in Ninoy, but I think ultimately what I cling on to as constant is it's that love for the fellow Filipino, right? So he was definitely, I think, a patriot, which it's rare to see that kind of parang just naked love for the Filipino and the Philippines in people today, no? But he was a patriot in that sense. And I think in the sense that he was willing to listen to everyone, he was willing to talk to everyone. And therefore, I think it makes sense that so many people, even decades after he passed, so many different people see something in his example. I think that openness to, you are a fellow Filipino like me, I might not agree with everything you say, but I'll listen to what you have to say. And as long as you respect the rules of the game, the democratic rules of the game, you give people... we put our ideas out there, and then let's see what the people think, and I will respect the outcome. I think that commitment to that kind of liberalism, not all aspects of liberalism, but that kind of liberalism is also constant.
Yeah, I go with the same idea that what really ties everything together is precisely that's responding to the call to love, and then and that's why I also entitled the book I put together to love another day, because that was a constant for him, for Tita Cory, and for Noy. Parang it was that there are many things that get into their mind, their consciousness, their choice, the need to make choices. No, but bottom line, it was always that: how do I express the love for country in a way that, while I agree to some at this point in time, I may not agree to it. Or another group in another time, because the constant was, how do I love my country? How do I love my people? No, and it's always that. And again, I don't know what ism that would be, but again, it's probably as close to our Christian teaching of love your neighbor, and love your neighbor as I loved you. It's kanon, parang, and again, it's probably part of that spiritual awakening in themselves, put everything aside, the noise of this world aside. And then how do I respond to the call to love? And I think that's the constant. That's the constant ever since. And up to now, I think that will continue to be for me my own. If there's anything that inspires me about the Aquinos, it's that even if people who hate you, people who betray you, people who once upon a time were your friends are not anymore, or betrayed the cause, so to speak. Normally, di ba, maasap ka, di ba? And the human beings that we are, bad trip ka. No? But for them, the way I see it, the way they went through, okay, You betray me, fine. But at the end of the day, you cannot tell me that I did not care for you. You cannot tell me that I did not care for my country.
I have one personal question for each of you. Actually, later in my list, but I want to ask it now. No, Rapa, I wanted to ask you. So you've been involved in social enterprises for the longest time, and I wanted to ask you whether originally my question was whether that was politics by another route or another name. No, now I want to tweak my own question, and I want to ask you. So you founded We Solve. You're with ASA Foundation. I mean, you do microfinance, all these things, no? Is that because it's something that you got from Ninoy, or maybe is it from President Cory, or I mean, what brought you down that road?
Well, I started working for NGOs immediately after we graduated.
Okay.
Of course, the impetus was, of course, a Benny Tan commencement speech where he talks about the need to go back, and that was 1985. So 85, I didn't know what to do. Of course, I took interdisciplinary studies, the course that people take when they do not know what they're going to do in life, and got into NGO work. And I haven't left for some reason, and it's a pattern. And for some reason, when I was about to leave the NGO sector, because I started a family, I needed to earn a little bit more. Something comes up, and that was the time when I was thinking about that. Cory Aquino ends her term, and she looks for somebody to help her with Aquino Foundation. That's when I started with Aquino Foundation, and after she passed in 2009, I was also going to talk about what do I do after after working for Cory Aquino. PBSP comes into the picture. Yeah. PBSP was the time that Noy was president. I was able to do stuff with the government.
Yeah. You were executive director of PBSP.
Yeah, private sector. And then, of course, when that ended, Lenny Robredo came into the picture. So,
senior advisor to Lenny.
If you look at the pattern of times in my own life, I needed to make very specific choices. Do I do this? Do I do that? But when you realize that these opportunities came into your life without you planning it, there's something there. There's something that calls you to do something more than what you think you should be doing. No? And I have to be thankful for my wife and my family to be very supportive of the choices that I've made. But John, as I make those choices, as I immerse myself in the work that I find myself in, again, you really thank the Lord, or you thank the guy above who sort of orchestrating, because the privilege to be able to do these things is not given to many people. I always tell people, what did I do in my life to for instance, to be given the opportunity to serve two widows that have changed this country's destiny in a very profound way. Yeah. What did I do in life to actually get to lead a business organization like PBSP, to be able to scale the kind of intervention or work that we can do? Who will be given those opportunities? And then again, the opportunity now to head an organization that's reaching 2.3 million nanays all over the country.
Wow.
To actually help them change their lives. Diba? It's a privilege. It's not work. In other words, you don't see it as work, or it is that. And then you go back. You go back to this whole. When you look at the lives of Ninoy, Cory, and Pinoy, you see these people who live their lives very committed, very driven to the mission, but end their lives without seeing the full fruits of the mission. Okay. And I'm realizing, and for me, that's very consoling and very liberating, in the sense that, I'm going to do all of this, and probably won't see the real fruits of this labor. But at the end of the day,
Rizal,
but at the end of the day, you're given this time, you're given this opportunity to do it. Do it. And do the best that you can for whatever is given you. And again, the privilege of being given this opportunity for me is priceless and blessing.
Well, my own personal question for you now has to do with your work in impeachment. No? So you've been very vocal. You've been upfront you've been in the front of the impeachment campaign against Vice President Sara Duterte. And of course, people now know you and people have been searching. I mean, you know this when you when you Google something and they autocomplete Kiko Dee with the protest.
Oh dear.
The new hand gesture.
News to me.
So what drove you to it? Is this, does it flow from this family tradition or is it from something else?
So I think, as far as the journey is concerned, so I think this particular chapter starts 2022, and actually pretty early on in the campaign, since I followed the surveys, they were never very optimistic about VP Lenny's chances. Despite, and it motivated me in a way to campaign harder. Na ayoko magpatalo sa mga survey. I will do what I can to fight the continuous revival of the Marcos dictatorship, right? But early on, I sort of had to accept that, okay, the most likely outcome seems to be something that's catastrophic in my mind. Marcos Jr. becomes president. And to me, I could only sort of find peace with myself with that possibility when I said, okay, I think if in that world, I want to be fighting for democracy. And the most concrete way I can do that is, well, my family has contributed to it. And whether Lenny had won or not, something has to be cleared about the name of the family, right? So I wanted to work, and I was very clear-eyed that after May of 2022, I wanted to work with the foundation. So I thought this would be mostly commemorative stuff. But fast forward a little to January of 2024, I thought we were just going to prepare the commemoration for the People Power anniversary. But this add-on EDSA Puera for the Constitution comes out, and charter change was sort of placed by an opposing camp and smack in the middle in the narrative of EDSA. So our group had to make a sort of decision. Are we just going to be commemorating, or are we going to talk about this charter change issue? And I asked explicitly to Sina Tito Rapa, my mom, my Tita Bolsi, who was on the board, na can I talk about this? Because for me, very clear in my mind was Lola always stood up when charter change was an issue, and this question of self-perpetuation started floating around again. So I became involved in not just commemorating EDSA that year, but also with the sort of the activism against charter change at the time, the People's Initiative and everything. And then towards the end of the year, the November 2024, VP Sara has her outburst in for all the world to see, and it was really all the world to see. Like it made like international headlines that the vice president threatened the president, who I really don't particularly like either. And when I saw the outburst at first, I was a little amused, to be honest. Now, okay, here are two people they don't like that are fighting each other. But I remember specifically it's my dad who asked, "Oh, what do you think is the fallout for this?" And I thought, oh, she really should be impeached na pala, since impeachment was being discussed at the time. But it always struck me as this is a project, just a political project now that the two are fighting. But when she did that, it was so clear that it really isn't acceptable if you have a vice president who can make threats like this and get away with it. No? So there had to be a strong response to it, and impeachment is the strongest way for the citizens to respond to something like that. No? And so a similar group that was working on anti-charter change, we got together and we're all of the same mind that I think it's time to file an impeachment. So we filed in December, and I think I guess it happens that I'm a sort of above average communicator within that group. So ako yung pinapa-interview, and then here we are today.
Well, I'm happy that the above average communicator is with us today. I want to bring back the discussion to Ninoy Aquino again. We're running long, but I have a couple more questions that I really want to ask you. Last year, Ninoy Aquino Day fell on a Wednesday, and President Marcos Jr. said, well, let's just observe it on Friday for holiday economics, right? And I think the late Congressman Ed Seligman said, no, you can't even do that. That's illegal, and so on. So, but that's what happened. This year, it falls on a Thursday, even closer to a Friday. But no, we are observing it as a holiday on the Thursday that it falls on. I'd like to ask, first of all, should we read anything into this?
Oh, well, there's 9 hours left. I don't know. There might be an announcement in a bit. No? Yeah, maybe President Marcos is too preoccupied with other problems to mess around with Ninoy Aquino Day. Maybe that's how I read into it.
But the idea, actually, this occurred to me last year, and I wrote this. last year, and I'll say it again, that if the Marcoses or the Dutertes are gearing up for a debate about who the Aquinos are, starting with Ninoy Aquino, I think that's actually a debate that you should engage in, because I think that the outcome will be favorable. I mean, so we've been talking about this.
By engage in a debate po?
So no, if they start thinking, talaga bang I thought that when he moved it by a couple of days, it was a start of, okay, maybe we can repeal that law. Eventually, putting his or maybe change the commemoration. I do remember that when President Marcos Jr. was a senator, one of his ideas was to move Rizal Day from December 30 to June 19, his birth date. And I also wrote something about that, against that. That actually December 30 is our oldest secular holiday. I mean, we've been observing that since 1897. So parang inisip ko, baka this was Marcos's way of starting this engagement. He cannot forbear to say the Ninoy Aquino International Airport. I don't know if you've noticed. No, he always says the International Airport or the Manila Airport. So anyway, if there is there is an attempt to debate the value of the Aquino name, whether he should belong in the pantheon of heroes and so on, I actually think it's a debate that we should all engage in, because it can be won. Right. I mean, ito nga, talking about this, I mean, when people learn about what has happened, parang iba eh. Anyway.
Good cop, bad cop ata tayo dito. Kiko first.
No, so I think whether we should engage or debate on this thing, I think we need to establish the facts of the Aquinos. I mean, I think that's pretty clear as far as I'm concerned. I mean, of course, it's been undermined for quite some time. Of course, and we Rappler did a very extensive evidence-based research on that, on how it's really been undermined in social media, and how the Aquinos, and of course our caller, has also been branded as anti-poor or anti and I think therefore for us we need to establish the facts that no, these people are very decent, and really these people really loved our country. Now, lies have been thrown against them, so our task is to see how we can bring the memory back, or how to get the facts straight, so that people see the value and contribution of these people. Not because they're our relatives, but because they're really been able to contribute. And there are other people other than ourselves who would testify how these people have inspired them to do what they're doing, and most of them, of course, are doing good. No, and therefore, if there's an opportunity for us to bring that conversation forward, why not? I mean, let's do that. I guess at this point in time, it just gets really just clouded by all the different noise that's happening politically. To your question earlier, probably the president's more busy looking at flood control issues to probably also distract people from other corruption issues that are being thrown at them. I mean, these are things that are in play, and I don't have time to put in an Aquino debate in the political conversation now. I'd rather, in fact, some people would say that some people would say that the administration is even more sympathetic to the yellows than they are to the greens. No, I mean, because of this unity thing. So they probably won't bring that into the conversation now. But yes, if there are opportunities for us to bring this conversation forward and to also push the truth forward, why not? We have to figure out how to be part of that. Sure. But at the same time, let me be very clear. The Aquinos, their family, are so unassuming. Hindi nagbubot na sariling bangko yung mga yan. They just keep on doing what they do. And in fairness to my cousins, no, they've really just, kung masusunod sila, low profile.
Yeah.
And in a way, for me, seeing that naman, I feel other than the Aquinos, other people should also step to the plate, I feel. We keep on talking about the Aquinos, or what will the Aquinos do, or what even people ask, is Kiko gonna run, or is Kiko doing this because he's going to run? I think we have to you have to take that mindset away. I mean, Aquinos na lang ba ang isusubo natin dito sa laban na ito? But I think the 3 Aquinos have already served this country in a very profound, significant way. Let's find out. Maybe they're seeing that that these people have done so well. Kayo na lang ulit. Pero no, I think that the example of these 3 people, these 3 leaders, is an example that every single person, every single Filipino will need to figure out, okay, kung sila nag-ambag ng ganyan, ano akin? Ano rin ba yung pwede akin? So that when we try to fight for the truth about the Aquinos, it's not just about the truth of the Aquinos, but the truth of what they fought for. And I think Filipinos need to step up to the plate. And new leaders need to come up, diba? To show the same leadership that these people have demonstrated. Diba? And ayun yung for me, the legacy of Ninoy, Cory, and Noy is a legacy of good governance and decency and love of country. If that is the legacy, for crying out loud, let's get more leaders to lead up the same way they did. No? Yeah. And hopefully when we see that, then the legacy lives on.
Yeah. So in terms of that, no, I think bad cop response naman. I think I have a logic professor who really likes to say, from a contradiction, you can imply anything. And there's like a neat proof there. No? If a contradiction is actually true, then you can just say anything is true if a contradiction is true. And I think what's happening right now is both for Marcos and Duterte, the legacy of Lolo Ninoy represents a contradiction, right? For the Marcos side, they had Duterte arrested by the ICC and they campaigned against Duterte. President Marcos says never mauulit yung mga nangyari nung panahon ng tukhang. And yet the same atrocities were done by his father, who our president is the proud namesake of, diba? And so there's an unresolved contradiction there. Yeah. And in a way, that contradiction seems to be to their advantage. They can pick a bit of people who are very upset towards Duterte, but they can also maintain the base that they have that is proud of what happened during the Marcos dictatorship. No? On the other hand, on the Duterte side, both when the ICC happened and when impeachment was, or not, when a little bit before impeachment was going on, but when VP Sara had her outburst, she also invoked the name of Ninoy Aquino twice. And the first time I thought it was just a slip of the tongue. The second time, it's hard to think it's not deliberate. No? And again, I think that's a contradiction. No? Parang her father's legacy is extrajudicial killings, and that is what killed Ninoy, right? And yet, again, from a contradiction, you can imply anything. I will be honest, I have never been more, despite being part of the people who filed an impeachment against her, largely because of what she did, I've personally never been more emotionally resonant with Sara Duterte than when she was saying all of these, when she was expressing all of her anger towards President Bongbong Marcos. I felt very represented there. So she's getting support from people who are upset with President Marcos, while also maintaining those who supported her father and also supported the kind of brutality that dictatorship did under President Duterte, under President Marcos Sr., and also the things that were the aspects of martial law that were reflected in the time of Duterte. So they're able to grow their pies because of this contradiction, even though it's a contradiction will lose you to the debate. I think our side, what I've been trying to do is, I've been trying to avoid contradiction. There cannot, for those that say that, I think there's a phrase that's tossed around that Marcos Jr. is now the face of liberal democracy, which is something I really disagree with. Because you have to get someone look it up. But parang that's it's a contradiction, because there's no recognition of the greatest harm done to liberal democracy, which is during the time of his father. And so for me, that's a hill that I would die on. But also when VP Sara starts saying, starts valorizing Ninoy all of a sudden, that might be, if all I cared about was making Ninoy the sentiment towards Ninoy more popular, maybe I should have let that go. It's bringing Ninoy to a new audience, but couldn't let that slide because it's a contradiction. It's a debate. So it's a contradiction. No? So I think as far as the debate is concerned, definitely I think we have a voice. I think ours is a position that's consistent, right? But in terms of sort of the whole addition of politics and that aspect of the debate, I'm not too confident about. Since we're not willing to make contradictions, then there are there are people, I think, there are people that will be close to the story that we want to tell. But that's the path I think we choose to take.
I think I'll reinforce that whole idea of contradiction. I think eventually history will have to be, future generations will have to look at history with the facts that they're presented with. And I think to what Kiko's just mentioned, I think if we're able to successfully put in place or, establish the facts about the Aquinos, then I think history will be kind to the Aquinos. And what will be seen is precisely that the consistency of mission, the consistency of values and principles. No? The Aquinos, even they, at some point in time had something to do with the Marcoses, in the same as the Aquinos had something to do with the Dutertes, and vice versa, diba? But as they turn against them, diba? Constant pa rin yung the way they serve, the way they behave, or the way they govern. No? So I think you will see many contradictions happening with some of the leaders. And what you will see with the Aquino leadership is that constancy and consistency of vision and mission and principles. And I think if history will be fair and will really be fair to the Aquinos, and I think that's our job. We need to figure out how to make sure that that's what it is, and we're not going to fabricate facts, because facts will show that they were that, diba? But again, imperfect people as they are, there will be. And imperfect as politics in this country is. You really need to talk to people even that you are not in favor with, or that you're against with. But in the end, when the final decision needs to be made, or the final difficult decision that needs to be made, how did they decide? Again, how did they choose? Is the final arbiter of this thing, diba? Then, and when you see the others that have been given the same critical choices in their life, diba? Or a critical choice of their leadership, you can see naman kung saan nagpunta. Diba? And I think about that only as we see a lot of these historical revivals of heroes from Antonio Luna to. And you can see the imperfections of these people. And in fact, doon ko lang natin, ganun pala yun. Of course, I didn't read my history that well. So, ganun pala kagrabe yung Aguinaldo. I thought this was just the Aguinaldo Bonifacio. Aguinaldo and Luna. Diba? Parang, ganun pala yun. And you only realize that over time. But then you now begin to see as the facts are told. Diba? And I hope history will be kind and will be fair to the Aquinos in the way they have lived their lives, the way they've contributed to this country.
Last question. In 7 years, in 2032, it will be Ninoy Aquino's 100th birthday. Ooh. In 8 years, in 2033, it will be the 50th anniversary of his assassination.
Right.
Rapa first, and then Kiko. What can we be looking forward to?
2030.
That's just 2 elections away. 2032.
Or more pressingly nga po, it's the 40th of EDSA next year, and we're racking our brains about that. But,
well, okay, yeah. It's the 40th of EDSA next year. In 2028, it will be the 45th anniversary of the assassination. So.
2032, how old will we be, John?
Too old.
Yeah, well...
I mean, I do remember you had that very well-produced documentary.
Yeah,
The Last
Journey. Yeah, right. Yeah. So, and then you had that campaign. So, it might be early days, but I'm just trying to see, what may we look forward to.
If I can take a stab at it first, I think another thing that another sort of not really mantra, but something that I keep in mind when talking about history is like history is really just that unless it speaks to what's happening now. No? So when you tell the story of Ninoy, Cory, and Pinoy, I think part of the reason why I feel so strongly about things that happen today is you can't tell that story and ignore what happened 2016 onwards. Now there's a real reversal on all of the things that they fought for so soon after the presidency of Tito Noy. So we make sense of that, and again, we oppose sort of the things that they stood against as they pop up again in our community, right? So I think it's hard to imagine what Ninoy Ninoy at 50 or the the 50th Ninoy Aquino, 50th anniversary of the assassination would look like, because what will the Philippines look like at that point, right? Will we are we going to continue on the current path riddled with contradictions or whatever? Or I kind of am tickled by the idea na in 86, like towards the end of the Cold War, it was the Philippines that figured out how to make democracy work in this part of the world, and in not just in Asia but in different in all over the world. And the parang communist regimes also fell, parang inspired by the People Power Revolution, and that's something I think to be very proud of. And I wonder, like in my sort of hopeful moments, which I won't talk about how often they are, but in my hopeful moments, I like the idea of what if we're again the one to figure out democracy in the age of social media. No? What if parang Philippines is like the social media capital of the world.
Yeah.
Also, and we were one of the first to sort of experience the rising authoritarianism. But what if we're the ones to figure it out for democracy at that point? And maybe Ninoy Aquino Dee once again is like. I guess what I'm sure of is I'm pretty sure it's still gonna be kind of fresh. No? And I was just reflecting on this, I think yesterday. I was born 91, so that was 40-something years after the end of World War II. And World War II has always felt so distant. Or going on 50. So, but 50, in less than 10 years, we're going to be 50th Ninoy Aquino Day. And I have a sneaking suspicion it's not going to feel as distant as World War II felt in the 90s or in the 2000s. No? So maybe I think that's I think somehow it will still be relevant to people, but the feeling around it could be similar to what we feel right now, where there are sparks of hope, but it does feel under siege. Or it could be we might be celebrating it because we figured out how to make democracy work
as the nucleus or hub of a movement or a force or something.
Right.
Rapa?
Yeah, the reason why I asked how old we will be. Yeah, because again, it's more like what I hope. I mean, I guess I also hope that pretty much what Kiko's saying, that I hope somehow this wave of populist totalitarianism that's sort of happening all over the world, I want to see that changed by that time. In other words, we should regain the wave, or we should be able to see democracy in its new form, or the form that will really be also more relevant to our people happening. No, I guess part of the realization is, even as we've been able to build regain democracy in the 80s and try to build it in the next 2 or 3 decades, somehow when people feel left behind still, then there's something in that democracy that didn't work. And I think it's very important for us to see what that was, and what do we need to do between now and 20, 30 or 10 years from now. We have the timeline to be able to try to do new things, or probably explore new ways of doing things that actually puts in a new ingredient in this whole democracy conversation that allows for people to be part of that democracy. But again, even America, who is the most democratic country in the world, suddenly fades into where it is now. You can see how vulnerable that is, and therefore it's so important for us to see how do we now work together in redefining that democracy, or redefining the state of a nation that becomes more fair and more just to our people. And I think that's why when we talk about the idea of that's why we started getting more involved with the work that I'm doing in microfinance. I'm beginning to realize that really the fundamental problem is really this nagging problem of poverty, and the nagging problem of systemic issues that have not been confronted, and that's going to take time. Poverty alleviation is going to take some time. System change is going to take some time. A lot of stakeholder relationships need to be resolved, and handling vested interests and big egos along the way is going to be part of the challenge of fixing those systemic problems. So, but that's what it is. And if we need to drill down more on what needs to be done and what we can do in the next 10 years or so, I think that's where it is. That's what we should work hard for.
This has been instructive and personally inspiring. Rapa Lopa and Kiko Dee of the Ninoy and Cory Aquino Foundation, thank you very much.
Thank you po.
And that's it for us today. The next step for engaged citizens, as always, is to take a more active part in the democratic project. Please download the Rappler Communities app and join the chat room of your choice. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to Rappler Plus. Thank you. This is John Nery. See you in the public square.